It's the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince, and welcome to a special edition of the Mike Prince Show. We come to you each and every day right here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. Our social media handles for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter are at the Mike Prince Show. Of course, the YouTube channel is Open Mic Broadcast Network, and our website is obnradio.com. As promised, we have a special guest who is going to enlighten us on a journey that we're headed yet down again, but it's all going to work out for the good. I am so thankful to have with us on today the Vice President of Student Affairs, and that is none other than Dr. Tim Sams. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me on your show today.
Okay, we're absolutely thrilled that you blessed us with the opportunity not only to get a little bit further along the process, but to get to know who Dr. Tim Sams is. Now, we know what the paper says and where you came from, but if you felt comfortable enough, would you please just kind of give us an introductory of who Tim Sams is and how did you land up on the great hill of Prairie View A&M University?
Well, Tim Sams is the grandson of Bernice and Wilbur Lawson, born and bred in Syracuse, New York, upstate New York, in weather that is probably diametrically opposite of what we experience down here in the Houston area. I went to school in upstate New York, did a graduate degree in Albany, New York, and a terminal PhD degree in Philadelphia. I cut my teeth in an opportunity program. I myself was an opportunity program student, having experienced upper bound, HEOP program in the undergraduate experience, and then again cutting my teeth doing opportunity program. Moved within student affairs, doing dean's work. Ultimately became a vice president when I wound up at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, again located in upstate New York. Moved from there down to Morehouse, where I left as a senior vice president for student affairs and have been fortunate to have spent the last year and a half here at Prairie View A&M University, working with our magnificent students in this magnificent community called Prairie View.
Well, sir, it is definitely a well-versed pedigree, if you allow me to say that. And let me say from the Open Mic Broadcast Network, welcome to Prairie View A&M University and the city of Prairie View, Texas.
Thank you very much. And I have felt welcome since the day I arrived. I really appreciate it.
Well, one thing, if you've been here for a year and a half, going into year number 2, you have probably been able to get somewhat of a pulse on the heartbeat of Prairie View and its uniqueness, that it can be a pro and a con, depending on how you look at it. Mm-hmm. What have you discovered about being in the environment of Prairie View?
I think the thing that stands out the most for me is passion. That folks, be it at the university or in the city, are very passionate about our space here in Prairie View. That we use our legacy, we use our heritage, the things that have come before us to kind of fuel our sense of where we ought to be in the coming years in the future, but be it again in the city or at the university. It is that passion that I feel like I run across all the time. And it provides for a range of conversations, a range of understandings about people's sense of what works, what does not work, and most importantly, the things that we should do collectively to improve our experience, be it residential if you live in the city of Prairie View, or be it at the university for those who care about the university. And I can tell you, to a person, I have yet to speak to a person who does not care very deeply about the condition and status of our university.
Well, when you bring that up, and I find that common denominator, not just at Prairie View, if you allow me to say, and no offense should be taken on this comment, but HBCUs as a whole, there's a different connect with an HBCU compared to other universities. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir. You know, so I traditionally say that in African America, we have possibly 2 pronounced institutions. You know, my PhD is in African American studies, so I really do think about the work that we do as a community. And again, we have 2 pronounced institutions: the church, which we are generally fairly familiar with. And the second, although not as popular as a church, would be our HBCUs. I think after that, we get really thin on those kind of formal institutions that we can look to as harbingers and caretakers of tradition, and places which we can use to project our condition as a people in the future. As such, HBCU being one of those institutions, one of the things that always interests me is the degree to which we don't think of our HBCUs in a collective sense in the way that we think about the church. We immediately think about the church, but with over 100 HBCUs remaining and doing well by our students, but most importantly, holding and hosting a conversation about our middle class in America, it seems to me that we do well as a community to do what I find here in Prairie View, to really take special interest and make special commitment to our HBCUs, because it is one of the two more pronounced institutions that we have.
Well, with you having a doctorate in African American studies, you would probably appreciate this little summary that I've discovered over my short time here on Earth. Is you mentioned the two sacred entities of the African American community, that being the church and our HBCUs. Systematically speaking, as a body of people, those are the only two things that really cannot be taken away from us, which helps make our identity. And that's our connection with God and the education that we gain, whether it be formal or informal. So I think that's why those two things are like precious stones in our communities.
You know, but we don't, I hope you would agree, we don't always see them as precious stones. They really are.
No, we don't. And but I can see now we're going to have some other opportunities to have some more interesting dialogue. And I don't want to throw our people off, because it's like, well, wait a minute, I thought I was listening to.
Right, we're going to talk about this athletic.
Yes, sir.
Athletic search.
Yes, sir. So with that being said, how do I put this? I'm a passionate guy. I heard you talk about passion. I played at the university, even though it was a few moons ago, but I still have a connect. I still do what I can to help carry the message of Prairie View A&M University as a whole, but then as an athletic department, when you start dissecting and breaking down, I guess, vested interests, if I'll put it that way. We are in a situation that is critical and much needed when it comes to the search for a new athletic director. Those who keep up with Prairie View, those that are listening to this show right now, you understand the dynamics of what we've had within the past 3 to 4 years. We've had multiple people in this, what appears to be a musical chair assignment, to whatever circumstances they would be beyond our control, but it is what it is. Is there a sense of urgency with this search going on, or is it something that you're going to take your time to feel the process?
We're going to take our time. We do feel a sense of urgency only in the sense that we recognize how crucial this role is, not just to the university and not just to the city of Prairie View, although we are clear about its import to the city of Prairie View. But athletics, and the person who's charged with guiding athletics is responsible for a significant amount of the brand and the projection of the brand across the country and across the world. But what we want to do is get this right. And that's no commentary on the past. But we want to make sure that we get it right this time. And anything that you want to do well, you want to make sure that you do it patiently and thoroughly. So we are going to be patient and methodical and thoughtful in the selection of our next, director of athletics.
Now, Dr. Sims, you just said something that was like a magnet for me. When you say get it right, what would be your interpretation of getting, quote unquote, it right as far as the athletic director is concerned?
Well, so I think you know that I chair the committee that's responsible for kind of managing the search, working with the search firm to ultimately provide to our president, Ruth Simmons, a slate of candidates who we believe reflect the values that she has outlined and will outline to us again very shortly. If you look at her memorandum that she sent on January 7th, she did speak a little bit about what she's looking for in this next director of athletics. And we are going to, once we sit down with our search firm, clarify that a little bit more so we can get a little bit more granularity. But in terms of getting it right, I think she spelled out the desire to have somebody who could really think through staying compliant as a Department of Athletics, think through how we're graduating our students, think through the fundamentals of wins, losses, and championships, a person who holds very high standards across the NCAA as well as SWAC, a person, again, who thinks about the achievement of our students and monitors our students' achievements. And so those are just some of the things that go into that statement around getting it right. And again, I don't want anyone to think that this is a comment about any of our past athletic directors or directors of athletics, but she is clear with us about what she's hoping we'd consider and the things that we need to think through as we ultimately provide her with a slate of finalists for her to make a decision on.
We're speaking right now with Dr. Tim Sams, who's the Vice President of Student Affairs at Prairie View A&M University. He has had the dubious task of leading the chair for the next athletic director for Prairie View A&M University. And with that being said, Dr. Sams, is this your first assignment of something of this nature in search of an athletic director?
No. The two schools that I was at previously, I actually inherited two athletic directors. The two schools I was at before athletics reported to me. And so let me correct that. Never had to make a search because I inherited two really good athletic directors.
Okay. And with that inherited, and I heard you just make the mention of some of the things that'll be successful. And I want to underline this, what I'm about to say, and I don't want it to be misconstrued, but it is what it is, as I mentioned before. We understand the importance of athletics when it comes to branding the university, because that is probably the best marketing that you could have as a successful athletic program. When we are falling short as far as the wins and losses are concerned, we have had a tendency in the past to highlight the fact that our students are graduating, and we do want to recognize that, and that is part of the deal. We bring students in because we thought they had a good enough ability to help us win ball games, but as a result, they are to graduate. But is it going to be, from here on, moving forward, a true balancing act that if the wins are not measuring up with the graduation rate, that would be a need of concern?
You know, in this capacity, my responsibility is to provide Ruth with great candidates.
Okay.
I think that question is something that pertains particularly between or to the president and the new director of athletics. But generally speaking, you want both. You want very competitive athletics on the field and on the court, as well as you want to be able to realize that promise you make to every student athlete who comes through your institution, that she or he will graduate. It's not an either or, it's not a trade-off. It's a dual commitment that we make to our students, that we're going to do our level best to put the best coaches, to provide the best resources for their teams, to provide a transformational wow experience for them through athletics, as well as to, at the end of 4 years, hand them a degree. They are not competing priorities. They are symbiotic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess that would be fair enough. That would be more, I guess, of the athletic director's question. So we'll focus on the search part of it, if that's all right. Is that safe?
Yes. Well, you know, if we migrate away, I think I can try to be disciplined enough to stay in my lane, and that is as chair of the search.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, with that being said, there has always been a concern, and I do understand about leadership. Leadership is going to be run one way or the other. Some are going to like the way it's run, some are not going to like the way it's run. That's just the nature of leading people because no one
Yes, sir.
is the same. Now, some of the concerns from the past, and I know we can only respond from the past to help control the present and possibly the future. Transparency, as far as the candidates are developing, what is the role or the plan, I should say, being the committee chair as far as the candidates who kind of dwindled through? Will there be some type of communication with not only with Dr. Simmons, but the alumni groups of the process and the order in which these candidates are being, dwindled down to the finalists?
Yes, sir. So we're going to start by doing a listening tour, and that would involve the committee identifying all of the stakeholders and providing various opportunities to sit down with the committee and to have those stakeholders to share their thoughts about what they would like to see in our next director of athletics. With the search committee, we will work with them to create a transparent process that would enable us to move through the kind of public phase of the search and provide as much visibility into the search process as we can provide. As you know, sometimes during these searches, candidates do not want to know their home institution, do not want to have their home institutions know that they are looking at other possibilities. We have to honor that. And so we can imagine ourselves having a public phase. That public phase, again, would involve as much transparency to as many of the stakeholders as possible. But I can also imagine that there would be a private phase toward the end as we whittle it down toward the finalists. And it's foreseeable that many of those finalists would not like to be known as viable candidates to their home campuses. All of that is to say that we will provide as much visibility to this process as we can.
I understand that and respect that wholeheartedly because the moment someone finds out that a person is looking for another job, then they might get shown the door and don't have anything to land on. So I can respect that process.
That's exactly right.
Yes, sir. Once again, we're speaking with Dr. Tim Sams, Vice President of Student Affairs of Prairie View A&M University. He is leading the charge, if you would, for the next athletic director to take over at Prairie View A&M University. Now, when you have been given this assignment, another question that I would like to ask you is, A, do you have your search committee already assembled? And then B, how do you go about seeking qualified candidates to be on this search?
Yes, we do have the search committee assembled. We announced it on January 17th to the university community. When Ruth and I sat down and thought through the kind of profile and the nature of the search committee, we thought about a couple of things. We wanted a widespread, a smattering of people on the committee, but we also wanted a kind of lean, agile search team, search committee, a group of people who can move fairly quickly through the process in a very thorough and thoughtful way. And so we have put on the committee, we put faculty, we put alumni on the committee, representation from athletics in the form of coaches. That makes perfect sense to anyone. We put administrators on the committee and we put students on the committee. So we've tried to look broadly across the fruited plain of stakeholders, if you will, and think through the 2 or 3 people representing the various areas and in places where we can get a 2 for. Because again, we wanted a small, manageable team. We feel like we've been able to do that. I think the real point here is, as we sat down, we were, again, very well aware of the fact that there are a number of folks who would like to sink their teeth into this process. And so we fully committed to providing, again, that transparent process, especially on the front end, from the standpoint of people contributing and helping us shape our understanding of what people or who people are looking for in this position. And we're going to make sure that that happens so that ultimately the person Ruth selects, it will be someone who she perceives to be able to respond to those concerns that have been widely shared with the committee, as well as her concerns that she has as a president.
Okay. Now, with that response, and I'm listening to the makeup, I guess the next part of that question would be how many make up the committee? I mean, the committee, the committee. And are you at liberty to list who those are that make up that committee?
We have 10 members on the committee. Okay. And keep in mind, I make up the 11th. Yes, I have no problem announcing it because we've made the announcement. We have Dr. George Brown, who's a professor of biology, but who is also our faculty athletic representative. We have Mr. Fred Newhouse, class of 70. We have Angela Branch Vitale, who is head of health and kinesiology here at the university. We have, and that's Dr. Angela Branch Vitale. We have Dr. Beverly Copeland, who is our special assistant to the president. We have Mr. Stuart Berry, who is our admission certification coordinator, who is in our registrar's office. We have Coach Angela Williams, who is in charge of women's track and field and cross country. We have Mr. Antoine Riggins, who is head coach of men's baseball. We have 3 students. One student is a softball player, Miss Brianna Graves. The second is Mr. Drake Cheatham, who plays football. And the third is Miss Cinchi Laguarre, who is our SGA Vice President for Athletics. And again, I chair the search. That makes for 11 members of the search committee.
Okay. Now, were these people just kind of randomly picked, or did someone volunteer, say, I'd like to be on the committee? How did you get this team together?
No, there was a lot of intentionality between Ruth and I in selecting this committee. Again, we were looking for breadth, making sure we had constituency from those 5 areas that I mentioned, from faculty to alumni, athletics, administration, and the students. And realizing alumni also represents those who are out in our community. So there was a lot of intentionality, but as you well could imagine, Mike, we had a good number of folks who volunteered.
Yes, sir. I could imagine that.
Yeah.
And I guess the next question, is there a possibility, a contradictory of when a coach gets to select who their boss is going to be?
Well, that's a very interesting question. But one thing we got to remember is that ultimately the director of athletics is the boss of the coaches, supervisors of the coaches, right? And coaches have to be part of the selection process. It is standard that coaches be part of the process in a way that they have an ability to kind of transfer the culture of athletics to the candidates, and the candidates transfer their vision and their administrative and management approach to the coaches, so that we can see if there's some synergy, if we're kind of doing an effective matching of those who would be coached by the director of athletics and vice versa. And so it is standard that you have coaches be part of the selection process.
Right. Now, I did hear you go through the list, and forgive me if this is a redundant question.
No problem.
You said some people in the community were also. Who were the community members that were part that made up the committee?
The person I was speaking most directly to is Dr. George Brown, who is also an alum.
Right, but it's almost a 3-for-1 with Dr. George Brown.
Right.
Right.
That is true.
And I'm not, and this is no attack on Dr. George Brown, because I know him personally, good guy. Mm-hmm. But part of, I guess, the concern or the challenge would be, it sounds like, and I'm just saying, it sounds like it's the same formula that has been done before. With this exception is we do have a search group that's going to make recommendations based on what they qualify, and then it's up to the committee to dwindle it down to the finalists. Is that what I'm understanding?
No, we'll work hand in glove with a search firm, a national search firm who is a leader in the search process for athletic directors.
Okay, and has that firm been determined yet?
We are still working to identify them and to bring them on board. I can't at this point speak about it yet. Okay,
so, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. I'm sure as listeners are too. So in a perfect world, the firm would say, here are 12 candidates, okay, that pass through our litmus test. Now, it was up to the committee to decide out of this 12, maybe get it down to 6 you want to interview. And once they go through the interview process, there's a ranking of how each one fared out. And I'm assuming a blind ranking. And once this blind ranking has been assessed and collected by you based on how the committee place these individuals that line up, you then take that, I guess, top 3 and recommend it to the president, Dr. Ruth Simmons. And then she says, okay, out of these 3 that you recommend, let's call these 3 back. And then there's another interview process, or is a selection made based on those recommendations?
So that is a possibility, the way that you spelled it out. I have seen that play out in a search. There are other ways in which a search could happen. It really depends upon the degree to which the person who ultimately makes the hire likes to see that search process play out. In this case, it would be our president. I have seen iterations where, even in my case, I like a closer connection to the selection process. And so I may play a more intimate role in the selection process that really helps call our understanding, our collective understanding about the more ideal candidate. That has yet to be kind of clarified as a function of a kind of bringing together of our president, the search firm, and the committee to have the opportunity to kind of map out how we want this to happen. That could involve, again, the number of times Ruth would like to talk to us to get our ideas about how the applicant pool is shaping up, how many times we talk to the search firm. There's really no hard and fast, and it really depends upon the degree to which, or the role, should I say, that the person who ultimately makes that hire likes to play in the selection process. But what you mapped out, I've seen happen time and time again.
Okay. And I guess my next question, this is a very unique group. This is not an everyday run-of-the-mill person that can say, hey, I'm going to apply for athletic director at a Division I program. What sorts of advertisement for the position have you gone through to get the most qualified applicants to apply?
So and I think you're hitting on the special reason why one or schools tend to use search firms. And that is, they tend to be, if done well, thorough in their advertisement, their cultivation of a pool of candidates, their ability to beat down the bushes and make calls that a school in and of themselves may not know. They have a sense of who's out there, who's interested. They have profile of executive types, and they use all of those things at their disposal to, again, cultivate an applicant pool. They will, in this case, advertise in the more pronounced mainstream advertisement streams. That's going to be the NC2A. That's going to be diverse issues in higher education. That's going to be the Chronicle. That's going to be, again, beating down the bushes, some 10 to 15 different mainstream media pathways that anyone who is prepared to be a director of athletics would be quite familiar with. It would be a basic staple and an area that they frequent. That's the kind of job that a search firm will be able to do for us.
Okay, and so you will leave that totally to the discretion of the search firm?
No, we will have, when we have our conversation with the search firm, we will also contribute to them the list of recommendations that we received. As you would well expect, that when Ruth made the announcement on January 7th, we have gotten some nominations already. We will put those nominations in front of the committee, as well as put them in front of the search firm so that they can get a very fair exploration of their candidacy. And so, again, we will work with the search firm to make sure we get the most robust, very qualified pool of applicants that we will be able to consider.
Okay. Now, you being the committee chair, Are you familiar with D1 ticker and college AD?
Yes, we are. And,
Okay.
and so too is a search firm. That's part of the proposal that they had to submit, and they had to demonstrate familiarity with those areas in addition to a host of others. Yes, sir.
Okay, but you have yet to select a search firm because I know the announcement was made on January the 7th,
Uh-huh.
and I'm part of that news release every day, and I hadn't seen any postings for the AD job in those media forms. I know you said the Chronicle
Right.
and everything.
Nope.
Right.
The post for the position has yet to be posted.
Okay, and that's what I was just trying to make sure that we turn over every stone available
Uh-huh.
because we want the absolute best to apply because we're still about producing productive people, whether they're students or faculty and staff at the university.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's very good. We're talking right now with Dr. Tim Sams, who is the chair of the athletic search for the Prairie View A&M University athletic director's role. Now, this question, as a committee chair, what would be your long-term goal at the end of this search? What would be the perfect world for Dr. Tim Sanders to say, we hit a home run on this one?
Hmm. To be able to provide our president, at a minimum, 3 candidates who really respond to her vision for the position. To be able to ascertain what she imagined these candidates to look like, to be, and ultimately to contribute to our great university. And it's my responsibility to do some cat herding, so to speak, right? And that involves working with the search firm to ultimately to provide at a minimum 3 candidates who we are convinced really meet her specifications.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, I know you say this was your first one leading. You've inherited some good ones. In a scenario, picture perfect world, how long do you estimate this process to take?
They take generally about 15 weeks.
About 15 weeks.
Yes,
So,
sir.
so in a
From
in,
the let me clarify. I'm sorry. From the point at which we bring the search firm on, it should take around 15 weeks to completion. And that at that point, we're talking about making ultimately the recommendation to our president.
okay, so if I were to play this in the next 3 to 4 months, there's possibly, not concretely, but possibly the announcement of a new athletic director.
That's highly conceivable. Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Well, Dr. Sams, I know that this may have seemed a little bit, as they say, uncomfortable at times, but I do thank you for your candidness and your response to the questions that not only that we had, but our listeners had that are directly connected to Prairie View. And I had some questions, but I guess that would be more or less for the athletic director. But I do want to ask this question.
Yes, sir.
How important would it be for the would-be director, male or female, to have an understanding, not simply of HBCU, but the locale and the dynamics of Prairie View A&M University?
Very important. It's very important. I think it's really interesting to think about how connected the university is to the city of Prairie View. There's so many alumni who live within the city of Prairie View. And for them, the university is an integral part of their experience, for some, their identity. And again, I think it goes back to my statement about their passion. That cannot be lost on this next director of athletics. An understanding about the role that athletics plays in the life of our community, both at the university and broadly within Waller County. And I think it's fair to say within the area of Houston. One really needs to know the centrality of athletics to our imagination, to our sense of being a community, our sense of accomplishment, that when Prairie View wins, we, broadly speaking, we win. And then when we have challenges, we have challenges, and that people feel passionately about that. Any candidate that we bring in is going to have to know those things.
Okay, and I am assuming that you have experience, game day experience for you
Mm-hmm.
personally, whether it
Mm-hmm.
was a football, basketball, baseball game. From your personal experience, what would you like to see added or subtracted for your game day experience that you'd like to see your AD lead the
If, if,
charge?
if you allow me to answer it this way, I don't want to do add or subtract because I think that may kind of make some sort of statement about who's been here in the past. I would
Mhm.
like to see a game day experience that is inclusive, that provides an unparalleled experience for our students, or what I like to call wow, that our students expect that when they go to a game day experience, they're going to have some experience that could never have happened anyplace else. The same thing should happen for any visitor to that game day experience, and most especially those in our surrounding community. Again, there is this kind of psychic connection, as I've been able to ascertain, among those who live in the city of Prairie View, those who live in the county of Waller, to our athletics and to our broader university. And so that game day experience is more than just the watching of the game. It is the rituals that we collectively engage in that provides meaning for us, be it a student, be it a faculty, be it an external stakeholder, a friend, or be it a neighbor. That we share that common experience and we provide and draw meaning from that game day experience. It's important that our AD understands that. I think the second piece is, again, branding. It is really important that for any viable institution in higher education today, that they always be seen in trajectory terms, that they are seen as an institution that is continuously improving, continuously moving upward and outward. And there is something about a game day experience that has an ability to project that and that characteristic of that university's brand. I'd like to see that in our brand.
Okay, and so would I. So would I, most definitely. And I guess my final question that I would have for you, at least for today, would be um, we know that we are fortunate to a degree to have, I'm going to say, a slight comfort zone as financing goes, but financing is the mechanism that helps propel us to the future. And
Right.
um, there's this should we play guaranteed games, we call them money games or not. And I have been on record for saying, and I'll say it again, that to me, taking guaranteed money games are a lazy person's way of fundraising. How important
Mhm.
would it be for the next athletic director to be a bona fide, proven fundraiser other than signing up
Mhm.
for guarantee games, which can risk injuries for our student athletes and,
Mhm.
and risk a bad experience because we know that only 2% of these guys go on to play professionally. So we want to put them in the best position, not only to be challenged, but to win, because 98% of them, this is it. And you don't want to be
Mhm.
remembered as being a loser. So how important is it for a fundraising attribute to be a part of that next athletic director?
It's central, and I think we saw in our president's posting that we expect that this person has a tremendous sense of how you go about fundraising within an athletics paradigm. One thing that we know for certain is a significant part of our alumni base affinity toward the institution comes through the front door of athletics. That athletics functions in some ways as a marker of progress for our alumni. Alumni often look at when they were there or here at the university and say, well, we won X number of games in this sport. And now we're winning or losing more than we were when I was here. That marker is used as a marker of progress or regress for our body of alumni. And when our alumni feel like we're not progressing, our alumni tend to give less. When our alumni feel like they're not being reached out to, our alumni feel they tend to give less. When alumni feel like they're not being brought into the fold again, we harken back to the game day experience. Alumni tend to give less. That same logic applies to all of our stakeholders, folks who may gaze into the university and be interested in taking a special interest in the university philanthropically. We have to be very clear about our value proposition, both to our alumni, not simply because they are a core constituent to a fundraising effort, but because they are ongoing, lifelong stakeholders to our university. And they care very deeply about athletics. They care very deeply about our student athletes. And not only do, as you point out, they're well aware that not all of them will not all of them will go to the pros, but by George, they want to make sure that they're graduating. And so when we talk about fundraising, we're going to have to select a person. And again, that's our president's responsibility. We are going to have to offer up as a committee, should I say, a person who knows these things and then some, a person who can look across all of the fundraising possibilities that relate to athletics and begin to tick the box, so to speak, so that everyone feels as though they're brought into the fold, so that the brand has an ability to resonate with a wide spread of people philanthropically, be it from the alumni base and even from the friends base.
Absolutely. And you're a highly intelligent man, so I will ask you this, knowing that you already know the answer. You know how an explosion works, right?
Yes, sir.
It goes down, back up, then out.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to focus on going down, up, before we go out when it comes to fundraising. And when we do that, I think part of the challenge is we focus on alumni, and I do understand that because that is the core of our base. But if we're talking about building a brand that goes beyond the four walls, and when I say the four walls, that of the alumni base, your brand is exposed when little Johnny, who doesn't even know what Prairie View is, but has on a Prairie View t-shirt. The brand exposes when people who are right within your backyard are part of that process somehow, some way. And I think from being in the community for the 30 plus years that I've been in the community, I think that's something that we really need to focus on doing a little bit better.
Okay. I will share that with our president.
Yes, sir. I want to thank you so much for being with us on today. And I'm going to give you, as is custom here on our show, some closing thoughts and comments, sir.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to express my appreciation for this opportunity to talk to you and the wider listening audience about this very important process we're embarking upon and ultimately the hire that we're going to make. As I pointed out in our conversation, and you did as well, this position, this opportunity sits centrally to the relationship between the university and itself, its stakeholders, be it both alumni, external stakeholders, its family, as well as the city of Prairie View. It always has. What we certainly are attempting to do as a search committee is to make sure that sits front and center as we go down this road of identifying candidates to ultimately recommend to our president. That fact is not lost upon our president. That fact is not lost upon the university. What we hope is that at the end of this process, by virtue of this process, we will have built an even more inclusive, much more connected relationship between ourselves as a university, ourselves as the city of Prairie View and the university, our body of alumni, and again, our friends and family external to the university. I've seen many searches do that, and I expect that if we do this right, by most especially really weighing into this listening tour that we're going to do, we'll have an opportunity to have everybody feel like they have a connection to the next person hired in this position. And again, thank you for this opportunity, and I'm sure we'll be talking somewhere down the road.
Very good, sir. He is Dr. Tim Sams, Vice President of Student Affairs at Prairie View A&M University, leading the search for the next athletic director on the Hill. I am the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember to follow us on our social media handles at The Mike Prince Show. The YouTube channel is Open Mic Broadcast Network. Our website, obnradio.com. And don't forget our 24-hour dial-in message line, 713-570-6736. And until the next time, you guys be blessed, and we'll see you on the other side.